In many cities in North America and throughout the world, there is a silent battle taking place. Citizens are being poisoned and mass medicated without their consent, and this has raised a significant concern for public health and safety. I decided to join this battle, and what I discovered has truly shocked me. This information, which is so vital in this struggle against tyranny, should be passed on to others, for the truth, and only the truth, will surely set us free.
Why do they stick fluoride in our water when fluoride is the main ingredient of Prozac?
No, I don't think so, but it can be a carcinogen.
Let's see, it was the Nazis that first put Prozac in the water, or I should say fluoride. Fluoride is 90% of Prozac.
Mandrake, have you never wondered why I drink only distilled water or rainwater and only pure grain alcohol?
Well, it did occur to me, Jack, yes.
Have you ever heard of a thing called fluoridation? Fluoridation of water?
Yes, I have heard of that, Jack, yes.
Well, do you know what it is?
No.
Do you realize that fluoridation is the most monstrously conceived and dangerous communist plot we have ever had to face?
This, you see, amounts to public murder on a grand scale. It is a public crime, it would be, to put fluoride in the drinking water of people.
Brush with New Q toothpaste. New Q helps toughen your teeth. Toughens teeth by strengthening tooth enamel with stannous fluoride. Stannous fluoride, the same kind of fluoride, recognized by many American dentists as helpful in reducing new cavities. And Q helps fight new cavities with a fresh new taste, a taste designed to tempt your whole family into brushing more.
This is a commercial about Crest toothpaste and water. Clean, healthy drinking water. Water has a lot in common with Crest. One of the minerals some drinking water can pick up on its way to you is fluoride. Fluoride is what makes Crest so good at fighting cavities. Fluoride can actually make tooth enamel healthier, tougher, more resistant to cavities. People who have fluoride in their drinking water usually have very healthy teeth. So do Crest users. But if you have fluoridated water, do you need Crest?
Fluoride. The word alone echoes with controversy. For years, there have been many debates in regards to its safety, and its history is shrouded in mystery. When discussing the fluoride issue, it is important to know the difference between fluoride in respect to dentistry and fluoride in regards to the process of water fluoridation. Fluoride in dentistry is applied topically to the surface of the teeth and is not generally ingested into the tissues of the body, whereas water fluoridation is absorbed into the body through consumption in our food and water supply. Another notable difference is that in one instance, you have a choice in whether or not you wish to ingest the chemical, and the other you do not have a choice, and in many cases may not even be aware that you are consuming the product. For over 50 years now, we have been told that fluoride is safe, and not only can it be found in toothpaste, but also several food sources such as teas, rice, fruits and vegetables, grains, dairy and meat products, and most beverages such as water, juices, and various alcoholic drinks. This inorganic fluoride is contained in these products because it is added to the drinking water supply in many communities throughout the world, most notably in Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom.
Is sodium fluoride in water any more dangerous than iodine and salt, Dr. Dunn?
We believe that sodium fluoride in water in the proper proportions is in no way dangerous or harmful to health.
Why then are you determined to force this on the people without a vote?
I don't think I am prepared to force anything on people because I have no legislative authority to do anything. I will attempt to persuade people that it is a desirable thing.
I do object to this rat poison being shoveled into my water. Your children have to be vaccinated in certain circumstances. So do mine. And I think that's quite right because it's for the protection of the community.
Why put it into our water? We drink it. It goes into our body and it accumulates in our body. Drinking fluoride is the equivalent of drinking suntan lotion to prevent from getting a sunburn. I don't understand. If I could get one person in your audience to look up fluoride and to stop using fluoride, I'll be happy. If I could get you to investigate and look into fluoride and what it does and the effects of it, I would be ecstatic.
I don't think I can make you ecstatic. I mean, I just don't think. I mean, good God, man, the world is on fire. You want me to stop and look why we're putting fluoride in our drinking water?
Yeah,
I'll drink buckets of fluoride, man.
Say that again?
You put a straw in a bucket of fluoride. I'll be a happy little sippy cup all day if that's the worst thing we got going for us.
Despite the fact that we are told fluoride is safe, many communities in these areas are involved in a silent battle with their local political representatives to have it removed from their municipality's drinking water supply. If fluoride consumption and topical application of this substance is so safe, then why is there such protest over its usage? What is the truth in this matter, and how does it affect our health and safety as individuals? I wanted to find out the answers to these questions, and had the opportunity to speak with one of Canada's top experts on water fluoridation, Peter Van Colart.
My name is Peter Van Colart. I'm the director of the Environmental Training Institute and the vice president of the Canadians Opposed to Fluoridation organization situated in Canada. I've been training water and wastewater operators in the environmental sciences for approximately 33 years. And the fluoridation issue for me came to light 10 years ago when one of my students said to me that I was really washed up with regard to the current information about fluoridation. I said to him, tell me what your evidence is, show me what your evidence is, and I'm willing to listen. He produced 4 videotapes for me, and when he produced the 4 videotapes, what happened was that I went back to my hotel room and stayed up that night before the next class the following day, and from that point on, in 2004, I've been fighting to get fluoridation ceased in the country and in my municipality and other municipalities in the province of Ontario, and I won't stop until I finish doing it for the entire country of Canada.
Next up, we have Peter Van Colart. I hope I've said that correctly. From the Environmental Training Institute. Sir, are you in the audience? Come on down if you would. Give us your name, and we don't have your address on file that I can see, so would you state that as well, please, sir?
Mr. Chairman, Mayor, Council, Committee. My name is Peter Van Colart. I'm the director of the Environmental Training Institute. I've been training water and wastewater operators in Ontario for 3 decades. I'm responsible for not only the training, but their certification, licensing, etc. And I have trained many operators, some of whom are in this room, which I was delighted to see. I've also been in service to the city of Brantford. The water staff and the wastewater treatment staff are my students, and I have to compliment you at this venture that you have some of the brightest and best people I know of in the business, and take an accolade for that because they truly do outstanding work.
I'm just going to type the word fluoride in. F-L-U-O-R-I-D-E. Fluoride. And let's see what we get here. Now I'm not going to look at the web results. I'm going to look at the image results. And take a look at what we have here. Alright, we have, first picture is dentures. Second picture here is a comic about people dumping poison into water mains. Then it says, tap into a healthier smile, with a very sinister looking image there. But the point I'm trying to make is that most of these images, I would say a good 80% of these images, if not more, are against fluoride.
Let's go to a definition of what water fluoridation is. And when you take a look at this, it's very simple. There are many definitions for it. This is probably the most simple and most distilled. The substance at the time in 1945 was sodium fluoride. It's an ionic compound, and all that means is that it separates very easily in water when it's dissolved in water. We have considerations that we're looking at now with regard to fluoridation. We're not using the simple compound sodium fluoride. In fact, very few places are using it these days. We're using something called fluorosilicates. And I'm concerned about the contaminants that come across with the fluorosilicate usage. I'm also concerned with the lead that leaches into the water as a result of the action of fluoride in the water distribution system.
The issue really is one of getting to use the terms correctly. The word fluoridation to a dentist means fluoride applied to the teeth because of oral health products, dental products, and products that the dentists use in their office under supervision, professional supervision, for the benefit of their patients. My argument is not with dental fluoridation, because that's a topical application onto the teeth. It works on the surface of the teeth, and it's not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is water treatment and water distribution. And that kind of fluoridation requires the user to take treated drinking water laced with the fluoridation chemicals and then ingest them. And the idea that the fluoridation chemicals only do something to benefit the teeth through ingestion and not harm any other tissues in the body is lunacy.
Fact remains that 98% of our population suffers adversely from dental ill effects, and it seems to me only reasonable to try and do something to prevent this horrible increase in
Why don't
tooth
you
decay.
advise that they clean their teeth?
Well, we've done that until our heads are flat, hitting them against brick walls.
The chemicals that are used for water fluoridation, which is what the issue is about, are in fact waste products of the superphosphate fertilizer industry, and in a lesser degree the manufacture of uranium concentrate from the other ingredients that are also found along with the phosphate used to make fertilizer. Well, this contaminant material came from Florida. So essentially what we're doing is we're exporting Central Florida's waste product and distributing it equally all over North America where we have fluoridating communities.
If you ask most dentists and ask them what they're putting in the water, most dentists would say sodium fluoride, pharmaceutical sodium fluoride, the same stuff that is in toothpaste.
They have absolutely no idea that it's, in 9 out of 10 cases, hydrofluorosilicic acid, and that hydrofluorosilicic acid is a waste product for the phosphate industry.
This has come about because for maybe 100 years, the phosphate fertilizer industry put out two very, very poisonous gases into the environment, hydrogen fluoride and silicon tetrafluoride. Eventually they were required to capture those, and they did it with a wet spray, water, and that water converts these two very toxic gases into hexafluorosilicic acid. And it's this scrubbing liquor, which is about 25% strong, is put into tanker trucks, driven around the country, and added to our drinking water.
If this stuff goes out the stack, it's an air pollutant. If it goes directly into the water supply, if they would take that scrubber liquor and dump it into the local river, it's a water pollutant. But if they put it into a tank wagon and sell it to somebody, a water authority, like magic, it's not a pollutant, and they can take that then to your drinking water supply and not discharge it into your river. They discharge it directly into your drinking water supply, slowly bleed it in, and as magic, it's no longer a toxic pollutant. It's now what's called a product.
The hydrofluorosilicic acid which is used in 95% of the fluoridation schemes in North America, is a liquid that is a byproduct of the phosphate fertilizer manufacturing process. Now, that acid is then transferred to cooling ponds. And if anybody was to Google the central part of Florida around the city of Bartow, you will see large excavations in the ground and large phosphate fertilizer factories for an area, approximately 25 miles by 25 miles in size, perhaps even larger. These plants and facilities are the largest supply of phosphate fertilizer for the agribusiness industry. And the byproduct is this hydrofluorosilicic acid. But the little dirty secret is that it also contains all of the other contaminants that were in the ore when the ore was originally roasted to extract the phosphate. And those other contaminants are a plethora of heavy metals, primarily arsenic, lead, cadmium, small amounts of radioactive substances called radionuclides, polonium-210, uranium, and a smattering of other heavy chemicals. Now, these substances are not discreetly removed when hydrofluorosilicic acid is pumped from these cooling ponds into tanker trucks and magically distributed throughout North America and delivered to water treatment plants as fluoridating chemicals. These chemicals carry with them small percentages of those contaminants, and measured on a pound for pound basis, I've calculated from one certificate of analysis that a tanker truck full of hydrofluorosilicic acid is delivering to a water supply an additional 8 pounds of lead that would otherwise not be in the treated drinking water. This is all introduced into the water supply, and it's dribbled in at amounts that essentially produce anywhere from 180 to 250,000 times dilution factor. Now, to most people, they would think, oh, well, that's a very tiny amount. The problem is, those contaminating substances, although they do not often exceed the limits allowed for those substances in drinking water, once they've been diluted into the drinking water, were not substances that were in the drinking water at the levels that are now in the drinking water once the hydrofluorosilicic acid is added. So populations needlessly get exposed to higher levels of things that we do know are carcinogens. We don't have any acceptable level of allowance for poisons like arsenic and lead because of their known deleterious effects. Yet, when it's diluted into the hydrofluorosilicic acid, somehow it magically is just glossed over as being insignificant because of a 250,000 time dilution factor. I'll give you an example of what this would be like. If I was to take the 8 pounds of lead that I found in a tanker truck out of the hydrofluorosilicic acid, stand on top of a water tower in any city with a valid drinking water operations license to put chemicals into the drinking water, and ask the media to film me putting 8 pounds of lead into the water supply, I'm sure a sharpshooter somewhere would pick me off before I ever got a chance to pour it in.
The water in Amesbury is supposed to have fluoride in it, but Rob Damaris has been concerned for years about what's in the supply he gets from China. The residue you see here is what won't dissolve when he puts the fluoride powder in the water.
What is that?
We don't know.
You have no idea what's in there?
I don't know what it is. It's not soluble. And it doesn't appear to be sodium fluoride, so we're not quite sure what it is.
Damaris says the residue clogs his machines and makes it difficult to get a consistent mix. For almost a year, these fluoride pumps in Amesbury have been off, And the water department says they'll stay off until they can figure out what's in the fluoride. The Department of Public Health says more than 650,000 customers in 44 communities are getting the product in question, and only Amesbury has temporarily stopped using it. But despite those concerns, we want to be clear. Both state and federal health officials tell Team 5 Investigates Chinese fluoride is safe. The New York company which supplies the fluoride in question says it is certified by the National Sanitation Foundation, which assures the quality of the product. And despite 1,000 complaints, the Centers for Disease Control also says it's safe, although testing continues to determine the precise composition of the residue.
They should test it to make sure that what they're putting in is safe for us to drink.
Paul Stewart lives in Newburyport and believes he has a right to know exactly what's in his water.
On the same day that I read the story about the fluoride coming from China, I also read stories about the melamine that was being contaminated in the milk products coming from China, that Abercrombie and Fitch actually pulled some of their jewelry off the shelves because it was contaminated with cadmium coming from China. And then we had another story about more lead in kids' toys coming from China.
Since 2007, most of the sodium fluoride has also been imported from China because it's the least expensive on the market.
I don't think that when it comes to something that I ingest every day, the lowest bidder is good enough.
I'd like to be able to add it in, worry-free.
What is the truth about fluoride? You may remember in the not-so-distant past when you would see warning labels on tubes of toothpaste that you'd buy for your children or use in your home. And these warning labels clearly stated to not ingest the toothpaste, that if you swallowed an amount of toothpaste larger than a pea size, to contact poison control immediately.
Fluoride is safe and effective, and it's one of the most inexpensive ways to really cut down on dental decay. So there's two ways you can typically get fluoride then. One, a supplement that you take systemically, which gets into the body, and you can get into the teeth as they're growing and maturing to make it nice and strong and resistant to decay. As they're growing and maturing to make it nice and strong and resistant to decay.
Here's a brand new box of Crest toothpaste. It says fights cavity, medicinal ingredients, sodium fluoride. Non-medicinal ingredients are sorbitol, water, hydrated silica, sodium, and a bunch of other chemicals in there. But that's it. It says do not swallow. Children under 6 years of age should use only a pea-sized amount and be supervised while brushing. And obviously it's got the Dental Association seal of approval on there saying that it's safe. Crest contains sodium fluoride, which is, in our opinion, an effective decay preventive agent and is of significant value when used in a conscientiously applied program of oral hygiene and regular professional care. So you have the Canadian Dental Association's approval right on there. There is no warning on here at all saying that it's poison or to contact poison control if swallowed. There's the dental seal of approval on there and the ingredients at the bottom. It's interesting to note that before they said that fluoride, do not swallow, harmful, contact poison control, as we've seen on the older labels. Now they're not doing it. Why is that? Is fluoride suddenly not toxic? What's the truth about fluoride? Is it really harmful for people? And if so, why is it being put in our drinking water? Here's some Crest children's toothpaste right here, and it says right on the label that it's anti-cavity fluoride toothpaste. It says right on there. But on the back, there's no poison control, there's no warning not to ingest it, and they also flavor the toothpaste so that it tastes like bubblegum or like fruit or like juice, so that it's more tempting for the child to actually swallow the toothpaste. There is no warning label or anything like that.
Hi, Dad.
I heard.
We had 2 cavities.
It's time for ACT.
ACT Fluoride Rinse can cut cavities 40% more than brushing alone, because ACT gets to surfaces a brush can miss. ACT now to reduce cavities 40%.
When should I start using fluoride?
toothpaste with my child.
Okay, well, first of all, congratulations on your beautiful baby.
Thank you.
When a child's teeth first erupt from the gum, just clean them with a wet washcloth. Okay? When they get to be about 1, get a toothbrush, just use water. And then when they're about 2, put a pea-sized amount of toothpaste on the toothbrush and you brush their teeth for them. What happens is a child likes it and they tend to suck on it. They'll eat too much toothpaste. It makes them sick to their stomach. It's not going to hurt them badly, but they will get sick to their stomach. So a little bit of fluoride when they're about 2.
A responsible consulting organization reports this study by a competent medical specialist and his staff on the effects of smoking Chesterfields. A group of people smoked only Chesterfields for 6 months in their normal amount, 10 to 40 a day. 45% of the group have smoked Chesterfields from 1 to 30 years for an average of 10 years each. At the beginning and end of the 6 months period, each smoker was given a thorough examination, including x-rays. The examination covered the sinuses, nose, ears, and throat. After a thorough examination of every member of the group, the medical specialist stated, "It is my opinion that the ears, nose, throat, and accessory organs of all participating subjects examined by me were not adversely affected in the 6 months period by smoking the cigarettes provided." Remember this report and buy Chesterfields, regular or king size. Premium quality Chesterfield, much milder.
Water fluoridation was first introduced to the public on January 25, 1945 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as a result of a controlled experiment by Henry Trondle Dean, the first director of the National Institute of Dental Research. This controlled experiment was an investigation to see if water fluoridation aided in the prevention of tooth decay. Prior to the water fluoridation experiment, and providing the supposed influence of the Grand Rapids study, was the research of a mysterious dentist, Frederick Mackay, and the father of operative dentistry, Green Vardaman Black. In the early 1900s, a then unknown phenomenon was occurring called Colorado brown stain, which was now referred to as dental fluorosis. With the help of other researchers, the two dentists discovered that fluoride was the contributing factor to their mottled teeth, and determined that it also prevented cavities. Based upon these early studies and understandings, Henry Dean wished to demonstrate that by adding fluoride to a community's drinking water supply, it would make the local dentist's jobs easier by reducing the amount of cavities. Fluoridation became an official health policy by the U.S. Public Health Service in 1951. Many people believe that water fluoridation was first introduced in the Russian gulags of Siberia and then later adapted into the Nazi concentration camps to make the prisoners more docile and acceptable to the conditions there. In other words, to make them more easily controllable and also causing sterility in women and lowering the IQ of the prisoners. Evidence for these claims is hard to find, as it seems the only source to this claim dates back to the book The Crimes and Punishment of I.G. Farben by Joseph Borkin. Despite this claim, there is apparently no evidence or documentation of this. However, there are some very curious links in regards to the early days of water fluoridation and its pioneers. These links could provide the keys to unlocking a massive conspiracy and clear and intentional violations of human rights on a massive scale. Henry Trondle Dean, the pioneering investigator of water fluoridation, served with the United States Army during World War I until 1919, when he returned home to continue his private practice in dentistry. In 1921, Dean entered the United States Public Health Service and worked in U.S. Marine hospitals until he was placed in charge of dental research at the National Institute of Health. In 1945, he became director, and following World War II, he directed epidemiologic studies for the German Army. When the Natural Institute for Dental Research was established in 1948, he was given the director position, which he held until his retirement in 1953, where he soon joined the notorious American Dental Association and its secretary of the Council on Dental Research. Another curious figure is Dr. William Lorne Hutton, known as a pioneer in diphtheria control and responsible for adding fluoride to the drinking water in Canada shortly after it was introduced in the USA on June 20th, 1945. During World War I, Hutton served overseas with the Royal Canadian Regiment as a medical officer until he was wounded on October 1st, 1916. Hutton became the head medical officer of health in the city of Brantford, the first Canadian city to fluoridate their water. For the first 3 months, they did not even notify the public. Dr. Hutton was also the president of the Eugenics Society of Canada between 1930 and 1938, during which time he became the head medical officer in Brampton in 1937. Hutton was the author of many papers on the subjects of public health and eugenics, a very curious combination of subject matter. The Eugenics Society of Canada was formed in November 1930 in Toronto, Ontario, and was influenced by the Eugenics Society of Great Britain as well as the American Eugenics Society. The group was headed by A.R. Kaufman, founder of the Kitchener-based Kaufman Rubber Company and nicknamed Canada's Mr. Birth Control because of his involvement in various sterilization programs and the eugenics movement. In honor of Kaufman, a public school and YMCA family center in Kitchener have been named after him. In 1932, Dr. Hutton became the Eugenics Society's president. Addressing the third annual convention of the Eugenics Society, Hutton declared that the falling birth rate among intelligent people of the Anglo-Saxon race was a racial and economic disaster because those who strive the most are just the ones who hesitate to have children. He also warned that the population of mental deficients is growing far more rapidly than is the general population. After the initial experiments for water fluoridation in 1945, further research was done to determine the appropriate levels of fluoride to add to the water supply. It was during this time that a well-known toxicologist named Harold Hodge became involved in severe violations of human rights while being rewarded for his services. He was also actively involved in the promotion of the water fluoridation agenda, despite the negative press it was receiving because of its link to being a main ingredient in rat poison.
Dr. Harold Hodge, a distinguished toxicologist on the Rochester team, has carefully investigated the safety of fluoridation.
Well, to put it very simply, fluoride is safe at 1 part per million. This brings us back to the fundamental point. Fluoride is safe, and I think I can say in conclusion that there is no health hazard that justifies postponing water fluoridation.
Hodge was also selected to head the United States Atomic Energy Commission's Division of Pharmacology and Toxicology for the Manhattan Project, the research and development project responsible for producing and testing the first atomic bombs. Strangely, this project was also responsible for gathering intelligence on the German nuclear energy project during World War II. Hodge was also the planner for the notorious plutonium and uranium injection experiments, where several subjects were unknowingly injected with plutonium and uranium during experiments to test the limits of exposure. Despite the fact that this later created an uproar and the US government had to pay the victims' families $400,000 each, Hodge became the president for the International Association for Dental Research in 1947, the first president of the Society of Toxicology in 1960, president for the American Society for Pharmacology and Experimental Therapeutics between 1966 and 1967, and the president of the Association of the Medical School Pharmacologists from 1968 to 1970. A criminal rewarded to the highest of degrees. Another shady and influential character in the scheme of things was Dr. Gerald Judy Cox, a Mellon Institute researcher whose studies into fluoride and his experimentations with rats greatly influenced the decision to begin water fluoridation programs. It was Cox who first suggested that fluoride be added to public water supplies. Cox is well known for stating that the case should be regarded as proved, and after the public became concerned after learning that fluoride was a main ingredient in rat poison, stated, "The present trend toward complete removal of fluoride from water and food may need some reversal." Cox was later appointed to be the director of dental research in the School of Dentistry and was heavily involved and worked with the aluminum and sugar industries.
The largest fluoridated population on the planet is the United States. And the United States is also the biggest promoter through exporting their expertise at the CDC and their big associations, medical dental associations, exporting that knowledge to the rest of the world. And largely, other countries in the rest of the world either are not interested in fluoridation or have tried it and found it to be false and have abandoned it. The next largest country by percentage is likely Australia. Australia has a fairly robust fluoridation program, although just in the past half year or so, the law has changed to allow municipalities to opt out of fluoridation should the will of the people indicate that they want to do that. And my last understanding is that many municipalities have dropped the fluoridation of the public water supplies under the flexibility of the new law. Smaller countries like Ireland, that is the Republic of Ireland, have mandated mandatory fluoridation. So that entire population, if it's drinking water from a public water supply, are drinking fluoridated water. The high that was reported by Health Canada in 2005 was 45.1% of the Canadian population was drinking fluoridated water. And the reality in 2013, as I sit here and speak to you, is that it's now down 28%, down to 32.5% of Canadians are drinking fluoridated water. And if we look at the actual population numbers, we're talking about 10.1 million people, largely in 4 or 5 major cities in the country, and predominantly in the Greater Toronto area. That pretty much encompasses about 6.5, 7 million people of the 10.1 in Canada. So the rest of the people that are drinking fluoridated water are predominantly in the cities of Winnipeg, Ottawa, London, Halifax, Edmonton, but not cities like Calgary, Montreal, Vancouver. These cities are progressive, and they have either never had fluoridation or they have ceased.
We have been fluoridating our water in Tennessee for more than 50 years, but never before has there been more talk that fluoridating our water might be a bad idea and a health risk. Tonight, Dennis Ferrier has the latest developments on a story that impacts all of us.
Joey Hensley is a respected physician. He's also a Tennessee state lawmaker. He is now combining those two professions to make a very strong point.
We've been doing it 50 years, but just because we've been doing something 50 years doesn't necessarily mean that it's right.
Hensley's talking about something most of us don't even think about: fluoridating water. After much research, the doctor has sent out a letter to every water district in Tennessee asking them to stop fluoridating water. The evidence, he says, fluoride works better when you rub it on your teeth, not when you drink it. That fluoridation is medication added to water without your permission, and that's wrong. But most of all, because the National Research Council believes young children are getting 3 to 4 times the dose of fluoride as adults. And now the American Dental Association is telling mothers not to make baby formula with fluoridated water because of fear of dental fluorosis.
And that's big news, and that really hasn't been publicized very much.
Health researcher Dan Stockin believes that this ADA warning about baby formula and fluoride is just the beginning.
The ramifications of this are so huge. I'm sure that the state health department hasn't quite figured it out yet, because once the door cracks, and it is now for what it does to teeth, the next group, one of the next groups that's going to start raising their hands and saying, what about us, is people who are on dialysis and people who have borderline kidney damage and impairment. Then there's all the people that have hypothyroidism.
Scientists like Nobel Prize winner Arvid Carlson and a large group of EPA scientists have called for the banning of fluoride because we don't know how much we're ingesting, so we don't know if we're being poisoned.
There are so many potential legal things about to happen that as a taxpayer, I think it would be really, really smart for the water districts and the Metro Nashville. Look, if people want fluoride, let them use fluoridated toothpaste and spit it out. But don't go poisoning everyone. Don't continue this after everyone knows all this information now, just because it's not convenient.
The issue about where do you get information is really important. What I've found in the 7,500 to 8,000 hours that I've studied this problem, personally, is that there was a lot of garbage information out there, and you really have to do research and dig deep for original scientific papers. One of the organizations that I belong to is the Canadians Opposed to Fluoridation. And COF, as it's called, is a national organization with a scientific body attached to it as an advisory board to vet the scientific material so that we can categorically state we've got the best pieces of evidence to prove our case.
Isn't it a fact that every reputable medical and dental organization in North America favors fluoridation of water?
That's a loaded question. Why don't you ask him?
I am asking. Isn't it a fact? Isn't that a fact, Doctor, that every medical and dental association in North America is in favor of fluoridation of water?
That is a fact, and I think you might also
I
add the
challenge it
World,
as a fact.
the
I
World
say it is
Health
not a fact.
Organization itself.
Are there any proven cases where fluoridation has had an injurious effect on the health of people?
There are certain individuals who attempt to make certain claims which have never been supported by any reputable scientific organization on this country.
The original evidence that was produced to show effectiveness at preventing dental decay through the use of ingesting fluoride compounds was seriously flawed.
Additionally, we have found that the original source data has been flawed, was flawed from the beginning, which means the decision to do so, to fluoridate, was also based in a flawed piece of science. And more importantly, it's been proven invalid.
Dr. Sutton, Philip Sutton, was a pioneer in deconstructing the statistics of the day back in the late 50s and the early 60s to prove the statistical flaws in the methodology that was used, so that the conclusions that were drawn at that time were not relevant to the purported claims. In the 1970s, Rudolf Ziegelbecker from Europe was the man who did a huge amount of work. He was a brilliant researcher, and what he did was to show mathematically how it was impossible for the claims of dental decay prevention to be offset by the increased rates of fluorosis in society. In other words, he found two things. He found that the claims of dental decay prevention couldn't be proven, and he also found that the effects of too much fluoride ingestion, fluorosis, were exacerbated in the countries that were actively fluoridating their community water systems at the time. I must comment that Dr. Ziegelbecker did pioneering work, and before his death, he was a very effectual man at getting many of the European countries to abandon or ban water fluoridation as a public health practice.
This document here, or this study here, was produced by Dr. Ziegelbecker in Europe, and he was the prominent individual who went around through Europe and said, look, we've gone back to the original studies and we've done a trace, and we traced all of the levels of caries to the levels of fluoride in the water, and we don't see a correlation.
In 1997, we voted to oppose fluoridation, and our opposition has grown stronger as more adverse data on the practice has come in. In the interest of time, let me state our recommendations first. We ask that you order an independent review of the cancer bioassay of sodium fluoride mandated in 1977 by Congress. Evidence for carcinogenicity in that assay was systematically downgraded by a special executive branch commission appointed and run by the very agencies that Congress did not trust to run the bioassay in the first place. That action saved fluoridation temporarily. We ask that you order chronic toxicity studies on the two waste products that are now used in 90% of fluoridation programs. EPA says there are at present no chronic toxicity data on them, and we ask that you order EPA set an MCL for fluoride that's truly protective of all American citizens, infants and adults alike, because the current one does not, in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act. We ask that you order epidemiology studies using dental fluorosis as an index of exposure to determine the extent of other toxic effects, especially effects on the brain and bone in the population that are attributable to fluoride. The American people, and especially our children, are getting way too much fluoride. 2/3 of children living in fluoridated communities have dental fluorosis in at least one tooth. Dental fluorosis is the visible manifestation of toxic overexposure to fluoride during their developmental years. The initial findings of the cancer bioassay were for clear evidence of carcinogenicity, and that is consistent with several epidemiology and many mutagenesis studies. The protected pollutant status that fluoride enjoys within EPA and other federal establishments is remarkable, as the charts over here show. And leading dental researchers are changing their views on the safety and efficacy of fluoridation. Doctors John Calhoun and Hardy Lineback, both former spokespersons for fluoridation, have published recantations of their former position.
In Toronto, there's a guy called Lineback, who was one of the greatest supporters of fluoride in the water. He's the head of dentistry at Toronto University. He's come out now and said, for God's sake, don't have it, don't have it. And as he was saying, they've had it in the water for years, decades in Toronto. They don't have it in the water in Vancouver. There are fewer cavities by a mile per head of population in Vancouver than there are in Toronto. Hey, it's good for teeth.
The other thing is that the products that go into water are supposed to be approved, and there's some approvals called NSF 60 and an AWWA standard, the American Water Works Association standard. None of these standards have done the health testing of this substance. If you were to write your supplier of this substance and demand the health test data, they cannot provide it. In fact, they will do everything to avoid giving it to you. Try it. Never, and this stuff has never been proven for the effective prevention of tooth decay. There was a document that came out in 2006 which was produced by the National Research Council in the United States, and it was really about the fluoride compounds that we were using in water and their health effects, and they found lots of effects. Obviously, items related to toxicity. Here's the big document that I want to get to for you guys. This is the document that was produced by Philip Sutton, and it shows the errors and omissions that were done in the experimental trials on which Brantford's water was, the decision for Brantford's water to be fluoridated was based. I take it, for me, that bell is the thing that tolls.
It does toll for you, sir.
Thank
you very much for your presentation.
The really big health effect by ingesting fluoridation chemicals or an excessive exposure to fluoride substances in the human body is fluorosis. And there are two kinds of fluorosis. The first is dental fluorosis and the second is skeletal fluorosis. Both manifest themselves in that the fluoride substances enter the body and accumulate in either tissue or structures of the body that are rich in calcium. The bones, the pineal gland, and some of the tendinous tissues or the ligamentous tissues of the body. The problem is that the accumulated fluoride is not easily removed once it's embedded in the body. Now, when that happens, there are reactions within the body that are permanently inhibited because fluorine and fluoride are enzymatic poisons. And what that means is they inhibit the body's use and production of enzymes for the beneficial purposes that the body makes those substances for. So when the fluoride inhibits these things, the body obviously can't carry out those same functions as it once did.
All right, you will know here where the fluorine has just been introduced that there is a distinct stimulation of all the cells as they react to the poison. This we take to be a defense mechanism. Then things begin to slow up and reproduction is definitely inhibited. Here we have another demonstration of the destruction of cells by perfusion of 1 part in 30 million. Notice the swelling of the mitochondria in the body of the cells. Notice the compaction of the material in the center or vital spot, which we call the nucleus of the cells. That too is evidence of injury. Note the swelling of the membranes around the cells. This makes it impossible for them to absorb foodstuff. Note they're shriveling up now. There are no cells dividing. All is becoming still. Most of the cells are dead or dying. This demonstrates the toxicity of this material. In summary, I wish to make it very clear again that this film, which you have just seen, is a graphic record of what we and Drs. Berry and Trillwood have seen in our cultures when they were perfused with dilute solutions of sodium fluoride. This film itself is presented here only to show that mammalian cells in tissue cultures can be and are damaged by fluorides, and some even killed when their contact with sodium fluoride is in the concentration of 1 part in 30 million. And we do have photographic records showing almost the same thing in 1 part in 60 million. Poisonous sodium fluoride in these concentrations may not be toxic enough to kill the cells or to destroy an organ or possibly the individual himself. Nevertheless, in human body, such poisons are subtle, insidious, and if prolonged over months and years, as in this case where fluoridated water is being used, chronic disorders and upsets of function in 1 or more of the vital organs may ensue.
Another brilliant person, Declan Waugh, has produced a thick volume, well over a couple of 100 pages, of the incidences of chronic diseases, comparing Southern Ireland, Northern Ireland, which is not fluoridated, and he has found overwhelming evidence that in at least 20 different chronic diseases that people face, that the rates in Southern Ireland, where it's heavily fluoridated, are much greater, in fact up to 450 times greater than they are in Northern Ireland for the same kinds of chronic illness.
Clinical medical studies had shown that a percentage of the population are intolerant to fluoride, and it could be anything between 1 and 5% of the population, so anything between 46,000 and 200,000 people in Ireland may be intolerant to fluoride. And the way that this may express itself with them is neurological problems, cardiovascular problems, dermatological problems, and there were the 3 main areas that have been found in studies in the United States, and backed up recently by the only study that was ever done in Europe that I only found recently in Finland before and after they stopped fluoridating in 1991. Remarkably, they found the same thing, that a percentage of the population are intolerant to fluoride, and after 3 months after they stopped fluoridating in that city, there was a 13% improvement in general health among the population in 3 months.
Our studies involve comparing the deaths of all persons in the 10 largest fluoridated cities of the United States with the 10 largest non-fluoridated cities in the United States year by year. And we obtained a very remarkable curve, which you can see here perhaps. Here is the fluoridated, and here is the non-fluoridated set of 10 cities each. Here's where the fluoridation started, and before this time, both sets of cities were identical. But no sooner had fluoridation started than this curve began to go up, the deaths began to increase, so that this effect occurs very promptly within 1, 2, or 5 years.
Now this, sir, is conclusive evidence that fluor kills because of cancer.
It is one of the most conclusive bits of scientific and biological evidence that I have come across in my 50 years in the field of cancer research.
Would this then, in your opinion, be the end of fluor in water, in drinking water?
It should be the end, and in the United States, it should so be the end by federal law known as the Delaney Amendment, which says that anything found to induce cancer in man or animals cannot be legally put into the food or drink of man or animals. This, you see, amounts to public murder on a grand scale. It is a public crime, it would be, to put fluoride in the drinking water of people.
The fluoridation of the US's water supply has been going on for over 50 years. There has never been any testing on what it actually does to the pineal gland of the brain before 1990. Let's take a look at what the pineal gland is and what it does. The pineal gland, also called the pineal body, epiphysis cerebri, epiphysis, or the third eye. It produces melatonin, a hormone that affects the modulation of wake, sleep patterns, and photoperiodic, or seasonal functions. It is and is located near to the center of the brain, between the two hemispheres, tucked in a groove where the two rounded thalamic bodies join. The pineal gland is reddish-gray, shaped like a tiny pine cone, and about the size of a pea, 8 millimeters in humans. It is often seen in plain skull X-rays, as it is often calcified. Calcification is typically due to intake of the fluoride found in water and toothpaste. Now we know it is shaped like a pine cone and is the size of a pea, and fluoride calcifies it. Let's go back to where it mentions the third eye and see what that means. The third eye, also known as the inner eye, is a mystical and esoteric concept referring, in part to the ajna, brow, or chakra, in certain Eastern and Western spiritual traditions. It is also spoken of as the gate that leads within to inner realms and spaces of higher consciousness. In New Age spirituality, the third eye may alternately symbolize a state of enlightenment or the evocation of mental images having deeply personal spiritual or psychological significance. The third eye is often associated with visions, clairvoyance, precognition, and out-of-body experiences, and people who have allegedly developed the capacity to use their third eyes are sometimes known as seers. The true function of this mysterious gland has long been contemplated by philosophers and spiritual adepts. Ancient Greeks believed the pineal gland to be our connection to the realms of thought. Descartes called it the seat of the soul. This gland is activated by light, and it controls the various biorhythms of the body. It works in harmony with the hypothalamus gland, which directs the body's thirst, hunger, sexual desire, and the biological clock that determines our aging process. When the pineal gland awakens, one feels a pressure at the base of the brain. This pressure will often be experienced when connecting to higher frequency. A head injury can also activate the third eye. While the physiological function of the pineal gland has been unknown until recent times, mystical traditions and esoteric schools have long known this area in the middle of the brain to be the connecting link between the physical and spiritual worlds. I used to think, just how far down the foxhole do I need to go to find out exactly what it is that is being hid and what is it they want from us, when all I had to do all along was to look in the other direction, behind my eyes, in the center of my brain, to see it. It all makes perfect sense now.
Since 1994, there have been 6 studies that show adverse effects of fluoride on the brain, even at the so-called optimum level of 1 part per million. The epidemiology studies that we recommend above should make a prime effort to look at brain effects, given the national concern over attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder and autism in our children.
Let me explain my first concern, which remains my top concern. The level of fluoride in mother's milk, mother's breast milk, baby's first meal, is extremely low. It's 0.004 parts per million. That means a bottle-fed baby in a fluoridated community in the United States, where we fluoridate the water at 1 part per million, is getting 250 times higher dose of fluoride than a breastfed baby. And that is extremely disturbing. For the first half year of the baby's life, the fluoride can get into the brain. And this is not the time, in my view, and the view of many other scientists, that a baby should be exposed to fluoride at 250 times the level in mother's milk.
Many pharmaceutical drugs, and most notably psychotropic and antidepressant medications, are known to contain high amounts of fluoride compounds. Some drugs, such as Prozac, are nearly entirely composed of the substance, and this has caused quite a stir because it is added to many communities' drinking water supply. Therefore, entire populations are being mass medicated without their consent, a clear and calculated human rights violation. Amounts of fluoride can also be found in anesthetics, steroids, anti-inflammatory agents, antibiotics, antacids, appetite suppressants, antihistamines, antifungal antibiotics, and many other medications. It is also found in Teflon and many other industrial products. Because of its use in behavioral modification, it is quite apparent that those in the industry are fully aware of its implications and yet still poison and medicate the water supply without our consent. On September 20th, 1991, the FDA held a hearing to address public concern about the ill effects of taking antidepressants and psychotropic medications. Many chilling stories were presented during this hearing. However, those chosen to sit on the panel to review these testimonies were largely members of the drug companies and pharmaceutical organizations, providing a clear and present conflict of interest.
I'll ask the committee to vote on the following statement. There is credible evidence to support a conclusion that antidepressant drugs cause the emergence and/or intensification of suicidality and/or other violent behaviors. Those in favor of that statement vote yes. Those opposed to that statement, no. And Dr. Dunner has left a proxy which makes it a unanimous of 10-0.
Based upon what we have learned thus far, it seems quite obvious that there are significant health risks associated with fluoride consumption. It is also quite evident that fluoride intake has an effect on the brain, mental functions, and that children are targeted at a young age. It would seem this is done so that as the brain is developing, it has some sort of permanent effect on the child which over prolonged exposure and consumption can significantly influence their lives in negative ways. It is also curious that supporters of eugenics, military men, and factions of the government and health industry were the largest influence in pushing the water fluoridation agenda. It is almost as if they knew all along that ingestion of fluoride caused considerable health problems, and is quite likely that somewhere, hidden away in some forbidden archive, studies and experimentation were done behind closed doors and out of the public's eye. In 2013, Harvard University announced it had concluded a study funded by the National Institutes of Health that children in high fluoridated areas had significantly lower IQs than children in lesser fluoridated regions. Several other studies have also been conducted attributing many other psychological, neurological, and behavioral problems with fluoride consumption. Fluoridation chemicals not only have a negative impact on animals and human beings, but there are also considerable environmental risks as well.
.5% of the water we do drink or do produce is not drunk. Only 0.5% of the water is actually ingested. And that means the cost of putting the hydrofluorosilicic acid into the drinking water supply, 99.5% of that cost is wasted.
I also have a very big concern with the source and treated water quality issues, because 99% of the fluoride that's put in the water is not consumed. We only drink about 1% of the water that is produced at the treatment facility. The rest goes down the pipe to the wastewater treatment facility and back into the receiving stream, which is the Grand River. So the net benefit here is really, why don't we just take 99% of the fluoridating chemical and run it right into the Grand River and call that a spill? Because that's essentially what we're doing. And that just makes the fluoride level in the Grand River and its receiving stream, Lake Erie, that much greater. And what we're seeing is a slow increase over the 60 years of fluoridation of the levels of fluoride in the lakes. We already have a level that's double now in Lake Ontario than the National Water Quality Guideline for fluoride in that body of water. This is Thunder Bay did something last year. They were contemplating fluoridation. They had their plant chemists do a test, and their plant chemists came up with this statement. It's in the package, so I'm not going to deliberate on it. We have arsenic and lead in the fluorosilicates, and this is out of a treatment magazine from 2000, that the single largest source of arsenic that we're putting into the water, even though it's below levels, is attributed to fluoride addition.
In Ontario, I've calculated that the average concentration in drinking water, which is between 0.5 and 0.8 parts per million, in an average community that fluoridates, will generate just less than 1 pound of fluoridated waste per person being returned back to the natural environment through the sewer system from the water that does not get consumed, but just gets passed through in a year. In other words, you can take your population and you can say roughly 1 pound per person per year is going to be the waste load of the fluoride and those co-contaminants back into your local watershed or water supply for the downstream community.
Hydrofluorosilicic acid is an extremely dangerous and deadly chemical that's used in Austin. There was no mention, for example, of the material safety data sheets of how dangerous this chemical is. Number two is the fact that hydrofluorosilicic acid is also one of the most dangerous chemicals transported in Austin if there were to be a serious accident and a breaching of the container on the highway or the city streets. And a lot of people don't know the hazards associated with a spill and a breaching of one of these tankers that goes right through the city of Austin and to the treatment plants.
First tonight, hazmat crews from all across our area responded to a chemical leak this afternoon in Rock Island. The chemical was so strong that it was burning through the concrete there. News 8's Christy Mergenthal has the latest.
It was just before 1 o'clock Thursday afternoon when hazmat crews were called to the Rock Island Water Treatment Plant for a chemical spill coming from this tanker truck.
It's the corrosive agent that the water treatment plant uses, and there was an overflow that caused spillage out from the building onto this driveway behind me.
As plant employees evacuated, crews began suiting up, working quickly to stop the leak that had begun eating through concrete.
They stopped the leak using some earthen berms with dirt, sand, and some commercial boom equipment, and had it contained pretty much to this facility within a short amount of time.
The chemical hydrofluorosilic acid is used to add fluoride to the plant's water. Although it poses a burn risk to skin, those living nearby were in no immediate danger.
There's no inhalation hazard at all, so there was no need for us to evacuate any residents around the area.
After several hours, crews were able to clean up the leak, allowing operations to return to normal.
They had to cordon off the area, obviously, but as far as the treatment of the water and the amount of water being used by the public, there's no effect on that at all.
In Rock Island, Christy Mergenthal, WQAD Quad Cities, News 8.
Thank you, Christy. Investigators tonight still haven't given an official estimate on just how much of that chemical spilled out.
Dennis, let's make sure we're clear on this. Fluoride, it is in tea, it's in coffee, it's in water, it's in bread, it's in toothpaste, but it's actually a poison, right?
It sure is, and here's the quickest evidence. Go to your bathroom and pick up your toothpaste, and you'll see a warning that if a child swallows more than a pea-sized amount of toothpaste, call poison control.
Thankfully, aside from having it removed entirely from a drinking water supply, there are many ways to remove harmful elements from drinking water and avoid fluoride consumption. Many companies are now offering fluoride-free toothpaste, and there are also several recipes online which explain how to make your own all-natural, organic fluoride-free toothpaste. There are also many devices which can be purchased that assist in removing contaminants from drinking water, such as reverse osmosis units and water distillers. All are quite effective in removing undesirable elements from your drinking water.
This is a water distiller that we have in the middle here, which I'm pointing to. It's £150. I bought it online from www.h2olabs.co.uk, and I had to pay £20 delivery. And basically it cleans water. So you put dirty water inside. You take this bit off the top. This black bit comes off, and the metal bit is hollow inside. You put your dirty water in there, so whether it's tap water, pond water, anything you want, and it distills it, and it's doing it at the moment. You can see the clean water dropping out into this container here, and gives you the closest you're going to get to pure H2O. It's like 99.9999%, I think it says on the website. So this is the best way to clean water, to ensure that you've got any kind of contaminants or anything that might be harmful out of it. The dirty water is heated to its boiling point, so by boiling it, it's killing any organisms or any bacteria or anything like that. The steam is then sterile and it rises up to the top. There's a fan at the top here, and as it cools it down, instead of it falling back down here, it goes through this complicated channel system and comes down and out through the spout here, and then it's collected in the container. It goes through a charcoal filter in here, which changes the flavour, which makes it taste a bit nicer, so it's not so chemically, because pure H2O is a bit chemically. And then you've got your warm water in here. And because it's warm, it's better to do it overnight. It takes about 5 hours to do a whole gallon of water, and if you do it overnight, the water cools down as well, so you wake up in the morning and it's nice and cool. I was being medicated, like whether I liked it or not, it wasn't down to me, so I just kind of wanted to take control really, so I bought this. The reason for this video is I'm actually going to show you the crap that's left over, so you can actually see what you are actually drinking, because you can't see it when you've got it in water and you're drinking it. But when I show you what's left off in here, you'll actually see what you're actually passing through your body. It might make you think about it with a bit more kind of concern. Okay, so the fan's now stopped, so it's finished, and as you can see, this is full. And we've had to wait about half an hour because there would have been lots of steam inside. So we're going to open it up now, and I'm going to show you what's inside. Right, there's all the steam coming out. Okay, I'm just going to turn this off, unplug these things. Smell that? Can you smell it?
Oh, that is disgusting.
It's horrible, isn't it? It's gunk in it. Well, I've got a spoon. We'll stick it in and have a look, and then I'll scrape it out. Can you actually see that? Is there enough light?
It's not really enough light. Wait.
I'll tell you what, I'll move it over here and I'll scrape it out.
Turn on the side.
Right, let's go over here. Oh shit. That's disgusting. Right, that's there. Oh, look, can you see that?
That's disgusting.
That's good. Now, basically, this is 4 cycles. This isn't from 1 cycle. I did 4 lots. Can't even get some of it out. Right. What is this crap? And would you eat it? Look at it. It's disgusting. It's like. It's horrible. Can you see in there?
Yeah.
It's disgusting, isn't it?
That is quite rank.
So yeah, I think I'm going to put this in like a petri dish or something and go down the local council and say, hey up, what's going on with this?
With the issue of fluoridation, the subject is so highly colored and biased by the proponents of fluoridation, mainly the medical dental lobby, spearheaded in Ontario by groups like the Medical Officer of Health and the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Ontario. These people locally have been instructed by somebody provincially to hold the fort, don't give up on a public health policy, even though we don't have sufficient proof that it is safe for people to ingest hydrofluosilicic acid, because there haven't been any health studies done, and or that hydrofluosilicic acid is the fluoridation compound that can prevent dental decay when ingested. We don't have any of those studies.
If you don't look, you don't find. They would like to imply, because they don't see anything, there's nothing wrong. But if they're not looking, they won't find. You often hear the promoters say things like, oh, we've been doing this for 60 years, and if there's any problem, we would know about it by now. Oh, no, you wouldn't, unless you were doing the studies.
So when council is presented with this dilemma, they have to choose between believing the white-coated expert that is handed over to them from the province, or individual citizens that have taken it upon themselves to inform themselves. And most councils will tend to go with the status quo. Most municipal councils are well-meaning individuals chosen from the population by the people with the idea that they're going to perform the best possible job they can for their municipalities. That's the idea. The reality is that many municipal councillors are inundated with reams of information they have to go through before they go to a council meeting, and then get asked to vote on it. And hopefully they have done their research enough to be able to make an informed vote.
I've gotten emails back from a few city councillors who said they didn't have time to meet with me. Some said they were continuing to monitor the community's stance on water fluoridation and they would get back to me. They have the chance now to right the wrong that's been going on in this country for so many years.
The people who are voting these things in, I don't think they even know what they're voting on half the time. I've sent emails off to councillors, I've not got any responses back.
If we show them that it's been associated with lowered IQ, cancer, thyroid dysfunction, kidney damage, dental and skeletal fluorosis, and they still say let's keep it in the water supply.
Email your counselor. Call them. Call Mayor Rob Ford and tell him that you want the fluoride out of the water supply.
Why are we wasting my tax dollars to put this toxic waste into our water supply?
It's freedom of choice. Everybody should have the choice to decide what goes in their body. And a no vote gives people that choice because fluoridation will not resume. They will not begin to put fluoride back in the water supply again. And a yes vote actually takes that choice away from the residents of Amesbury, because the people that don't want the toxin in the water won't have the opportunity because it will begin to be fluoridated again. And the third thing is it's unethical to ask somebody else to ingest something, in particular a toxin, against their will.
In the places where the councils have chosen to override the medical officer of health's advice to continue fluoridating, the sky has not fallen in on those municipalities. There has not been rampant decay because of ceasing fluoridation. All of the things that were purported to come about as a result of stopping fluoridation have just not manifested themselves. But an individual council doesn't have a lot of time to seek advice from other councils who have already made the decision beforehand. So what happens is they take the best advice they have available from whatever expert they deem is credible. So the secret for citizens is not to protest, but to get informed. And when medical officers of health or dental professionals step forward with old 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old information and flaunt that in front of council as the latest and greatest absolute truth regarding fluoridation, it's informed citizens in every case that I've been involved with who have trumped what the local medical dental authorities have trotted out and have trounced them literally with it and sent them reeling back under the rocks from which they've crawled.
More than 30,000 people weighed in on the debate. In the end, the difference was just 195 votes in favor of stopping the fluoridation of Waterloo water.
Well, I was pro-fluoride. You know, I've said yes to fluoride. So for me, it's up to the citizens, and that's what the referendum's all about.
Fluoridation started in 1966. The debate was intense.
We had hoped that the message about science, about looking after our oral health and our overall health would resonate with the public.
Well, this resident was in favor of the status quo.
I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but from the common knowledge, I've been told to vote yes for fluoride.
But this man who voted no was not convinced.
I didn't hear too much talk about it with my coworkers or friends or family, which I thought was a bit surprising.
The no side says the voters have made their wishes known.
So even though it's a close vote, I think it speaks loudly to the wishes of the public.
In advance of the vote, regional councillors who will ultimately approve the end of fluoridation made it clear they would honor the outcome. The next step appears to be clear.
This new council will send direction to the region of Waterloo at their next meeting, which will be in November, that we would like to have the fluoride removed. And this is what we have talked about from day one, that we would follow the wishes of this community.
I think for anybody who cares about wellness, for anybody who cares about good public policy being based on sound decisions made with strong underlying scientific evidence, this is an easy issue to end in the country because it just doesn't meet that test. What it takes is Canadian politicians at the municipal level, because this is where the responsibility is landed, to grow a spine and actually be involved in an objective analysis of the information. You don't have to be a scientist, and it needn't scare you, because I think most politicians are very good at smelling out a lie or an untruth when it's presented to them. And because of that fact, it's very easy for seasoned politicians to know where the truth lies. But you got to give it a chance.
By now, it should be quite apparent that water fluoridation is an unethical, unproven, and unnecessary practice with considerable health and environmental risks involved. It does not assist in helping the teeth and is based from flawed science and outdated research. It's time to end water fluoridation all over the world, and the facts and information presented in this film should help you in addressing the issue with credible facts and sources. If you live in a fluoridated community, look for a local group opposed to the practice or start your own. Email your local counselors or call your city's representatives and let them know you do not consent to being medicated and poisoned. The solution to this problem lies on a local level, and if we all work together to address this concern, it will just be a matter of time when water fluoridation is a thing of the past, read about in the history books by future generations. Let your voice be heard. Together, we can make a difference.
If any individual wants to get involved in any local battle, they can also contact the Cough General Manager at our website, and we compile a list of active groups in various municipalities across the country, and we'll disseminate the name of concerned individuals who want to help out those local groups, so that citizens are not putting up multiple Facebook pages, they're not trying to create multiple user groups for the same effect, and then this way they can band together, not squander their resources, and get the best use out of their resources for the maximum effect, which is to stop this policy.